welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul, and I'm here with Dotsie Bausch. Hi, Dotsie.
Yes, we are zooming in. I'm in my home, and you're in yours, and we're not together in the studio, but this COVID thing's just it's getting crazy. It's been crazy, and it feels like we just keep going, it's going to stop. It's going to go away. We're going to do these great things next month. No, the next month. No, the one after that. And now we're in 2021, and here we still are. So, yeah.
Well, COVID did help people get used to Zoom. So the fact that we're Zooming is fine for our audience. And also something good did happen out of 2020, and you're going to share it with us. The U.S. government came out with their new dietary guidelines for the next 5 years. And Switch for Good worked really hard to try to remove dairy from those guidelines because, as we know, there's many health reasons and environmental reasons and animal rights reasons to get rid of dairy. Tell us what the guidelines ended up being for the next 5 years.
Yeah, for sure. It was, you got to set your sights high. You got to set your sights and your goals at the top. And, as sometimes you get some variance of that big, hairy, audacious goal. And we did. We had a small win. I would consider it maybe even a medium-sized win. So what we asked for is, first and foremost, yes, for dairy to be removed as a food group for humans, clearly, and to get rid of the recommendation the dietary guidelines had for 3 servings a day of cow's breast milk, in all of its forms. But we asked if that is not to happen, or if that is not possible yet, because we will win that battle within the next 5 years or 10 years. I feel positive about it. We asked that 3 different things take place and be edited on this version of the dietary guidelines that came out just 6 days ago. So first thing that we asked is for soy milk to be stated as a nutritionally equivalent beverage to cow's milk, and that it be the alternative for people who dairy makes sick, which is 36% of the American population. And of that 36%, about 85% are disproportionately affected. They are people of color who have lactose intolerance. And so dairy makes them very sick. Anything from stomach distress to bloating to diarrhea to constipation to itchy skin conditions to wheezing and asthma. So that's the first thing we asked. And we also asked that an extensive explanation and symptoms of lactose intolerance be explained, because just simply saying, if you have lactose intolerance, have soy milk, many people don't know that that's what they're suffering from. They have no idea really even what it is. They kind of heard about it. They just think, maybe that's that thing when you kind of have a stomach ache, you have too much ice cream. They don't really know or understand what it is. So we asked for a complete education. And then lastly, and almost most importantly, we asked for soy then to be offered as an alternative to dairy milk in schools for all of the hundreds of thousands, really millions of school children who dairy makes sick, especially the children in the subsidized WIC program who are getting their only 2 meals of the day at school. So really incredibly important for them to have an alternate choice to dairy, because it makes about 80 to 90% of them sick because of lactose intolerance. So the win that we got was the first thing I mentioned. The dietary guidelines said soy is nutritionally equivalent. It is an excellent alternative for people who dairy makes sick, and it is right next to dairy as the 2 choices that you have. They even went so far as to explain that other plant milks are not options for if you're looking for this combination of nutrients. And I appreciated that because of those children that are getting their only meals of the day from school. If they were to replace, let's say, cow's milk or soy milk with rice milk, they would be nutrient deficient over time, right? The rice milk serves a fantastic purpose, but it doesn't have as much calcium, as much vitamin D, as much potassium, almost no protein. Yes, some carbohydrate, not very much fat. So looking for that whole scope for underserved communities and children needing nutrition, soy milk is what it is. And they've included that on there. So we made quite this step forward in this journey, the dietary guidelines.
Does that mean that in schools, kids are going to get a choice between milk and soy milk, and in the WIC program too, which is, I think, stands for women and something children, right?
Yes, it's certainly women. Yeah, that's exactly what it stands for. And we'll see. We had a long discussion about that yesterday at Switch for Good with our attorney and our campaign manager. We are going to have to wait and see. No, in the guidelines, it did not say that we are also going to offer, literally physically have this soy milk available for the children who don't want to choose the dairy milk. I mean, right now, the law is in many, many, many states that if you decide to not take a cow's milk with your lunch or with your breakfast, you have to have a doctor's note. So that's insanity, right? Just right there. So we have to kind of wait and see. We have to kind of wait and see the implementation of it. And then that is the one area that we are going to be fighting for very hard this year, probably starting in the summer, depending on what they do with it. Now that it's on there, are the states going to say, oh, wow, okay, we have a lot of lactose intolerant kids, we need to offer them, but it's up to the states in how they implement it. So we have to, it's a bit of a wait and see.
Well, great job. I know you made a really powerful statement in front of the U.S. Dietary Guidelines Committee on behalf of people of color, because it is incredibly racist that the U.S. government pushes cow's milk on so many children, for one thing, but also subsidizes it so heavily as opposed to other milks. And so thank you for your work, and great. We made a step forward.
We'll take it, right? Sometimes you just have to take a small to medium sized win, right? You just do. Yeah. On the road to all vegan experience. I'm so excited to have this human on. He's a friend of mine. It's Josh Balk we have on today. So Josh is, he's the co-founder of Just, right, which used to be known as Hampton Creek. They're the makers of vegan eggs and mayo. He's also, as if that didn't take up enough time, the VP of Farm Animal Protection at the Humane Society of the United States. He has dedicated decades of his life to policy change in the food industry and in politics to bring about more compassionate choices for people, sustainability, and let's just say it, a just world. He's also been a really great friend and mentor to our work at Switch for Good. And last October, he spent 4 hours with us at Switch for Good doing a deep dive into our goals, our form of activism, and our messaging, and provided such great insight to us that is valuable, and we have certainly applied to our 2021 agenda. He's whip smart. He's a sage guider, having spent almost his whole adult life fighting for justice for the voiceless. So we're very excited to welcome him, and I am going to bring him into our Zoom room, and we're going to get to hang out with Josh Balk. Josh.
It is great to be on. Thanks for having me.
You and I got to do a hike up in Marin County, which I think was midsummer. I think it was June or July, but it's foggy because I was freezing the whole time. In fact, I think you were the one that provided the blanket for me to wear as a skirt, because I showed up in shorts because, I don't know, it was the middle of summer, so I thought, but it was so cold. But on that hike, we traversed a lot about you, and I want to do that in this podcast. But one thing that I don't know that everyone knows about you is that you were a baseball star in high school, and your high school still gives out the Josh Balk Award to the best pitcher, right?
That is accurate. You know what? I was good a long, long time ago, and it seems to be the older I get, the better I was looking back at how good I actually was.
I hear you. I think I'm the same way.
What are you talking about? You're one of the greatest athletes who's ever lived. I was good in high school.
You're the only one that says that. Literally, you're the only one that's ever lived. But I always appreciate when you say that, because it, of course, makes me feel good, but it's not true. But Adidas voted you as a top 100 major league prospect, and then you got injured. Tell us that story.
I was pretty good in high school, and I had aspirations to pitch specifically for the Chicago Cubs. That was my whole identity growing up. You know, my dad was a baseball coach, and I lived and breathed baseball. Everyone who knew me knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to pitch for the Cubs. And after a pretty good high school career, went off to one of the best junior colleges for baseball called Keystone College in Pennsylvania. I had a good freshman year. I happened to lead a league in strikeouts and had a pretty solid year, but then I hurt my shoulder. And I tore part of my shoulder called the labrum, had surgery, tried to come back, and it was a no-go. I started throwing after rehab, and I was throwing like half as fast, and I knew, I'm in trouble. And that's when I started realizing I really should come up with a different set of dreams for the next decades of my life to come.
Having that kind of disappointment in your life. And I'm curious how it shaped you, because most people in their early 20s don't even know what they want. And it sounds like you knew for a very long time and worked extremely hard. And it was your identity. And you had to switch. How did you do that?
I switched for good, as one may say. And how I did that was is that yes, my heart was broken. And it took me a while to get out of kind of a soft depression, I would say, of realizing that it's more so my identity just had to change. What was really helpful, actually, was my love of animals. Knowing that as much as I love baseball, I loved animals even more. I happened to not really know growing up what I could do to help animals. I always kind of thought that I would do it, on the side of playing baseball. But once I injured my shoulder and realized I wasn't going to be a professional athlete, it actually reframed my mind to think, what can I actually do to help animals full time, not just on a side? And so in a way, I'm so incredibly grateful that I got injured, because there's no way that I would be where I'm at, speaking to you too, if I didn't get injured in the first place. So it all turned out well. It just took a little bit of time, a couple months, to kind of get through the grieving process.
Yeah, it's in a way too, having it happen like earlier in your life. You watch some professional athletes that happens in their career. My brother-in-law's cousin is Corey Kluber, and is a great pitcher, has won the Cy Young Award not once but twice, but he keeps injuring his arm, and I think he's a free agent. I don't know what's going to happen. And mid-career, or even the beginning of a professional career, I mean, he's probably 5 years in. You probably know better than I do, 4 or 5. But it can be just debilitating in terms of you don't know what else there is. And you haven't been able to identify other passions that you have in your life and what you care about. And I'm not saying that what you went through wasn't difficult, but like you said, it was more of a couple of months, and you said, okay, this is this other, just, you're a bleeding heart for the voiceless. And I care about that deeply. And I want to make a difference for them. So what were those first steps then out of Josh's identity? You also, I might mention, was valedictorian of Keystone, right? So like, just let's use a brain now, because it's really big. And what were those first steps? I know you were an undercover investigator. Was that the first thing that you did in the animal movement?
Well, my brain was not as big as the afro I had in college. But what I did in school was to start an animal group. And what we as a group collectively did was we protested the circus. We worked with the dining hall to add more plant-based options. So we were doing some things locally. And that's how I started to feel, wow, I'm making a difference. Like, hey, I'm not changing necessarily the entire world, but in this aspect, I am making a difference. And especially, looking in the dining hall, even adding one plant-based option, I felt so empowered. Like, look what I did. This plant-based option exists because of what I and my colleagues in my animal group accomplished together. So that was the first start. I started volunteering on political campaigns up in the Northeast Pennsylvania, where I was living at Keystone College. So I started getting involved in politics, supporting candidates who I felt were better for animals. In my mind, I'm pretty nonpartisan. I just want to support candidates who are good for animals. And I started getting involved in that way. Eventually, when I transferred to George Washington University in Washington, D.C., I was walking down the street. I knew I wanted to do something related to animals in some way. And via serendipity, I walked by a building, I looked to the right, and it said Humane Society of the United States. And I was thinking, I never heard of them, but they seem like an animal group. Shame on me for not doing my research before I walk in the building. And then I walked in, and they were so nice. This person right off the street, they said, "Sure, come in. How can we help you?" I was like, "Can I intern?" And they interviewed me on the spot. Something, by the way, that will not happen these days.
No.
But back in 2001, you can walk in wearing ripped jeans, an old t-shirt, and heck, they'll take you. If you can do some phone banking and drop off some literature in the Capitol, we'll take you on the team. So that's how I started. That's how I took some steps, outside my baseball career ending.
So I didn't realize that you worked for HSUS at first, and you're at HSUS now. In between, didn't you work for Animal Outlook, which used to be called Compassion Over Killing?
That's right. So I interned at the Humane Society of the United States when I was at George Washington University. And I had so much fun. I would go to the Capitol building wearing the one suit that I owned and wear it every single day, but drop off fact sheets. This is pre-internet becoming like a really big deal in use in the Capitol. At least, or maybe it was a use. They just wanted to get me out of the office and just say, "Hey, drop off these fact sheets." So either way, I was in the Capitol all the time, and I had the time of my life. After I graduated from George Washington, I did work at the organization you mentioned at the time called Compassion Over Killing. And, I worked to provide more plant-based options at restaurants. So I worked with restaurants, giving the business case why to add more plant-based foods. I drove around in a van called a Faunavision van, where you park the van, then you open up the side and a big TV comes out and it plays factory farm footage, and I give out literature next to the van. And I also did undercover investigative work. So as an example, I'd worked in a chicken slaughterhouse in Shawol, Maryland, which is in the heart of chicken country. And that was to expose the inherent cruelties that go on in chicken slaughterhouses, because as you both know, they don't want the public to see. They know that when more people see what actually goes on, the more likely they are going to make changes. So that's the need of doing undercover work, and that's the type of work that I did at the organization.
And what was that like? What did you see? What did you see things that you didn't think that you might see? What were you most surprised by?
It was scary. I didn't want to get caught. I had it back, almost 20 years ago, the equipment, oh my gosh, it was a giant vest with wires coming out everywhere.
Oh.
And I swore the moment I walked in, everyone could tell that I was hooked up with a hidden camera. And I had a big shirt to try to cover everything. So the first emotion I had, Dotsie, was that I was scared of getting caught. Then once I felt okay, I'm just going to kind of just play along like I'm good to go. And I actually walked into the room called the shackling room. Mm-hmm. My heart started racing. I could breathe in the smell that was just filled with, feces and blood. And you could tell something bad happens in this room. Mm-hmm. And everything I knew that was about to happen, the shackling of animals, goes against everything that I am as a person, to harm animals. And yet I knew I was about to do it. And so I had, this deep anxiety of if I'm actually going to follow through with what I have to do. Eventually, the conveyor belt started to move, and the shackles started to churn. And I looked to my left, and the chickens started coming my way. And there's about 20 workers who would shackle most of the chickens before they got to my position. But eventually, one chicken did, and the manager was right next to me. And he's like, "All right, here you go. You got to grab her and shackle her." That was the instruction, by the way. That's all the type of training that they had. And so I grabbed her and I shackled her. And under my breath, I said how incredibly sorry I was. In fact, I said, "I'm so sorry." I never will forget those words. "I'm so sorry," as I did that to this poor chicken who did nothing wrong in her life. She didn't deserve this fate. And what's interesting, and you asked the question, what did I notice? I noticed when I grabbed her legs were all twisted. And that's because of the genetic manipulation that we force upon these animals, that they're just grow so big and obese in just a brief amount of time, just 45 days, that their bodies become all contorted. So I grabbed her giant twisted legs. She was so scared. She was pecking at my hand, flapping her wings, trying to escape. And when I shackled her, just looking at the path she was going down, where her life was about to end, I mean, my heart was broken. And then I just had to keep working. And that is a moment in the life of an investigator. And there are people who are far braver than me, who do this far longer than I have. But that certainly was a defining moment of my career to help animals.
And so you had to turn her upside down, right? Is that because you shackle
Correct.
the legs from the, and do you remember as they all went by, their eyes looking at you in different?
You know what? When I noticed her eyes is when I was about to grab her. I noticed her eyes looking around, and I can't imagine what she was thinking. It must have been so incredibly scary. She was clearly so frightened. You can just sense just the type of fear and overwhelming just type of shock she was in, to think, what is happening right now? And looking around to seeing these other chickens shackled, hearing this scary equipment around her, it must have been an overwhelming feeling of fright. And it's a thing that none of us would want to do, really, though. I mean, I got to tell you, as horrible as it is to see and to actually do in person, I can tell you, though, there's a bright side to that. The bright side is that most people do not want to do that to an animal. Most people do not want to harm an animal in their bare hands, let alone ever see it. And I think that's a good thing, because at least we as humans, most of us, lean towards being compassionate to animals, lean towards knowing it's not good to cause suffering and cruelty to animals. And as long as we have that lean, we can help move all of us in a better direction. So that is a big hope that I have for a brighter future for animals.
Mm-hmm.
What did you experience with the other workers? And I don't know how long you were there, but how did you change?
The other workers were there not because they loved the job. In fact, 0% were there because they loved the job. In fact, I was there for roughly a month in this particular case, and the turnover was probably 100% turnover in just a month.
Wow.
The workers, they were friendly. Certainly to me, they were. And you were doing a shift. My shift was about 4:30 a.m. to maybe 1 or 2 p.m. And you have nothing to do other than shackle animals. So people are just talking to each other. And I got along really well with them. And that's one of the reasons why, when I look at industrial animal operators, like, I don't blame the workers for what's going on. I blame the system for what's going on. Because these are the type of folks who I'm sure would not want to harm an animal. I don't think they go home and brag about, oh, look how many animals I got to shackle. This is not the type of job that people, grow up to want to be one day. They just happen to be in this position and where they live, or the type of, lower income bracket where this is the only opportunity for them in this given moment of time. But if we have a better economy that's focused on humane options for food, let's say plant-based, these workers no doubt would rather work somewhere where animals weren't harmed, and they weren't breathing in these horrible fumes of what we were forced to breathe in these operations. So overall, I really have a soft spot to workers who are working in a system that is inherently abusive and cruel to animals. We really have to change the system overall. And the workers, I think, would be the first ones to say thank you.
Mm-hmm. You've been integral in changing the system, and co-founder with your best friend from high school, and you guys are still roomies, right? The two Joshes, Josh Tetrick. Tell me about the company is called Just, and it's Eat Just. now, right? I mean, I have that right.
It is Eat Just, but you can call it Just.
It's just, I like just.
Yeah.
I eat just all the time, and that was my second to last thing to give up, because as you know, Josh, as an athlete, it was like, eggs, and more eggs,
Right.
and I love savory in the morning. I'm really hungry if I don't have like a good combo of carbs, proteins, and fats in the morning. So I was the egg gal. Love what you guys do, but tell me about the series of first 5 conversations that you two, I mean, where were you? Were you in your living room? Were you camping? And it was like, hey, we can totally make a plant-based egg that everybody's going to love. What were those first combos?
Josh Tetrick is an amazing human being. He worked for the president of Liberia, worked for the United Nations, worked for President Clinton, worked at a law firm, a brilliant mind, unbelievable work ethic, former athlete, played linebacker, Division I. And he eventually became an animal person. In high school, we used to have these debates all the time about what our diet should be that reflect our values. And he conceded the fact, by the way, that he should be vegan. But he said that he wasn't ready yet. And you know what? I was like, all right, you'll get there, my friend. You'll get there. And he eventually did. And he's been vegan for many, many years now. But how we got to the point of founding the company is that I had an idea working with food corporations, trying to get them to switch to cage-free eggs, which is certainly a better step forward for big corporations that use eggs. It's just better they use cage-free than eggs from caged chickens. And I was just frustrated at the time of the pace of change, thinking, you know what, if we somehow can create a company that offers plant-based eggs that had the same taste, same texture, more affordable, by the way, it doesn't have the allergy issues or the sustainability issues, animal welfare issues, ethical issues. So that would actually win the day. And so I approached Josh about it, who at the time was trying to figure out what company he wanted to found, because he really wanted to found a company. I was like, Josh, I have an idea for you. So I pitched that idea of plant-based eggs, and Josh was quiet, even just a few seconds. And if anyone knows Josh Tetrick, he is very quick-witted. He will respond faster than the speed of light. The fact that he paused even a few seconds, I knew that I got him. I did.
Good job.
And he was game. He thought it made good business case. He also thought it made a great case to make a difference in the lives of chickens. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And so he and I founded the company. We brought together a group of folks who have a lot of talents that we certainly don't have, people behind who have science backgrounds, culinary backgrounds, business backgrounds. We put together a team, and we pitched the concept to a venture capital firm, and they thought it was a pretty good idea, and we got the first investment, and that's how it started. In fact, it started at the time, it was called Hampton Creek, named after my dog, Hampton, who was the giant St. Bernard who passed away a few years earlier, and he was the sweetest dog who's ever lived. He never barked at a person his entire life. A complete stranger could go up to this giant St. Bernard and give him a hug, and he would love it, and he would drop some slobber from his face all over the person as a sign of love, I think. At least that's how I viewed it. And in his name, we thought that's a great way to carry his name forward.
Did you decide to focus on eggs because no other company was focusing on that? Or was it because of how many chickens and souls you could save?
Both. You're right. They're focusing on plant-based eggs was something that no one was doing. There's tofu scramble, which certainly is something that I've eaten a lot. Probably you two have eaten a lot as well. But at the same time, like I want to try to make a difference outside like a crazy vegan like myself. Like I want to hit people who are more like my family members who aren't vegan, and encourage them to eat more plant-based. And so, yes, one reason is that it wasn't really a focus from any company. And the other is exactly what you said, is that, the egg industry in the United States right now, there's about 340 million egg-laying chickens, most of them confined in cages. And when we think about the cages, they're about the size of a home microwave. Imagine 8 chickens in there, unable to spread their wings, unable to move more than a few inches at any given time. And that's their life for a year and a half until they're slaughtered. And so it fits the idea of a large number of animals and a lot of suffering. So if we can really take that on, at least to offer options for consumers, we think that could be a big win for at least the type of world we're trying to create. So you nailed it with your question. Those are the two major reasons why we wanted to go forward in that way.
And then you had just a wee bit of pushback from the egg industry on that journey in the beginning. And after the investigation with the issues with them, that the head of the egg board had to resign after that USDA investigation, right? So give us that cliff notes on what, I mean, it was ugly what they tried to do.
What the heck happened there, right? Well, the American Egg Board, which is part of the USDA, its purpose is to promote eggs. Now, removing that type of free capital concept, whether that's okay in a free capitalistic system, or ethical construct, whether it's okay to have a part of a government that does that. Let's remove that for a second. Their sole job is just to promote eggs. They cannot, by mandate, go after companies and try to harm American companies. Yet that's exactly what they tried to do. So at the time, Hampton Creek was getting some negative publicity out of nowhere. It was weird. It was, people really look around like, this is strange. It's just a startup company in a garage in San Francisco. Why is all this negative attention happening?
But you knew where it was coming from, or at the beginning were you kind of like, wait, okay.
There was an unknown like this. There was a known that's an oddity, but we didn't know where it was coming from.
Okay.
And so someone had the idea, is like, wait a second, this is strange. Someone should look into American Egg Board in the USDA to see if they're doing anything. So via Freedom of Information Act, which is something that we in America can do, we can ask for government records, and if they're not classified, they should be given to the public, and just ask, okay, how has the government been involved with Hampton Creek? And it turned out the records indicated the American Egg Board launched a covert campaign to try to destroy the company. They hired the world's largest PR firm to plant stories about Hampton Creek. Again, now it's called Just, but at the time, Hampton Creek. They hired a consultant to try to work with food retailers to not carry the product. And the pinnacle was that they even had death threats against Josh Tetrick. Of course, claiming later that they were joking. But who makes jokes about killing a CEO of an American company? So that was discovered. The Guardian broke the story. That's the same media outlet that broke the Edward Snowden story. And then it made global headlines. And my favorite headline, by the way, it was in Quartz, the media outlet Quartz. And this is by the time this was happening, Hampton Creek had mayonnaise called Just Mayo. And the headline was, there literally is a government conspiracy against vegan mayo. And that turned out to be exactly true. There was literally a government conspiracy against Hampton Creek and vegan mayo. So that's what happened. And even David Letterman at the time made a joke about it. And so, you know, if you can have the Guardian break the story and David Letterman talk about it in his monologue, you've gone a long way.
You did have trouble, I understand, using the term mayo, right? Can you tell us about that?
Well, you're right. There was trouble, and that was part of what the American Egg Board focused on. Same with another company called Unilever, which is one of the largest food companies. What they tried to do is claim that if you sell a product that's mayonnaise, you have to have eggs in it. And of course, you know, Just was not going to put eggs in their mayonnaise. And secondly, the regulation says the word mayonnaise. Just Mayo, as you know, Alexandra, is called mayo. It's not called the word mayonnaise. So by the letter of the regulation, you can put anything you want in mayo. And so the company fought it and eventually won. Of course, the American Egg Board dropped everything they're doing because of being exposed. Unilever, they filed a lawsuit against Hampton Creek. I mean, at the time, Hampton Creek probably had a couple dozen people. Unilever is one of the largest corporations the world has ever known. And can you imagine a couple dozen people in a garage get a lawsuit from one of the largest corporations in the world? But Unilever dropped the lawsuit because they got a lot of negative attention for filing this suit. And I got to tell you, to give Unilever credit, they've really since then have embraced plant-based. And I give them a lot of credit. I do believe the company is made up of good people who do want to do the right thing. And they, in fact, now have plant-based mayo. Crazy enough how the world turns, isn't it? They actually have plant-based mayo now. Their CEO has talked about the future being focused on plant-based. So, hey, no grudges. I'm just happy that they're moving in a really good direction.
Yeah. Before we just continue to go through your career and maybe depart from Just for a moment, please tell us about Just and the importance of this chicken dinner that was served in Singapore, December 2020, last month.
A chicken dinner that didn't involve any chicken having to be killed. So Just worked with the Singapore government to become the first company in the history of the world to be able to sell no-kill chicken. And this is chicken that is produced by having cells of chicken, and the cells are grown in a bioreactor similar to like beer. It's kind of like a brewery. You know, if
Right.
people are drinking beer, then guess what? You're okay with the process of making no-kill chicken. And so,
Yeah, great point.
So instead of brewing beer, this is in essence brewing the growth of chicken cells.
Mm-hmm.
That growth turns into muscle. Muscle is what people eat as chicken. And so Singapore approved it, and the product was sold at the most prominent and famous restaurant in Singapore. And for the first time again in history, people actually went into a restaurant, sat down, ordered chicken, ate the chicken, paid for the chicken, and that chicken did not have to come from an animal who was ever sent to a slaughterhouse. So hopefully the world will never be the same. I feel like it is a Wright brothers moment, only this could have even more of an impact. So I'm very proud of the company.
Absolutely. Yeah. And tell us about the economics of it, because those of us, many of our listeners who have been following the process of cell-based meat, I think the first burger that anyone tasted was the $50,000 burger. So tell us about the economics of this chicken. If I were at that restaurant, I ordered, how much was it, and what is the reality? I guess we definitely have the reality that's going to expand and happen, but what is the timeline? Like, how can we get this everywhere at a price that people can afford?
So for a 3-course meal at this restaurant is $23. Now that's pretty reasonable.
It all had chicken each course? Is that what you're saying?
No, for the totality of the course, and one entree was chicken, but also if you have the appetizer, the main course, and the dessert, it was $23. At the same time, it is more expensive than conventional chicken, no doubt about it. It is right now. And how I see it is that the first cell phones that came out were super expensive. And we kind of remember like 80s movies where the cell phones were like giant, almost radios that you're holding up in your ear, and you see people with only like driving Corvettes or doing it in like Wall Street. And now everyone has a cell phone. I mean,
and they're free. T-Mobile will give you a free iPhone 12 if you sign up.
Exactly right. So sign up for this Verizon plan. We'll give you a cell phone. Exactly right. That's the trajectory in technology. That's why TVs are more affordable now than they were years ago. That's why, in a near sense, like Teslas are dramatically more affordable than they were, and they're getting more affordable. That's how technology works. And it's just about scaling up. And so I have no doubt when it comes to cultivated meat that's produced without killing animals, it is going to be expensive now. It's going to be expensive in the years to come. It will be. However, the cost will continue to go down as it scales up, and it is going to come to the point of being as affordable or even more affordable than meat that came from animals who were cruelly confined inside factory farms.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I've been to Singapore once, and at a nice restaurant, the regular chicken meal is $23. So,
yeah,
yeah, the killed chicken, I should say, not the regular. The murdered chicken meal is $23. It's very expensive there. So, you have to make the right comparison.
It's a lot less expensive than a pandemic. It's a lot less expensive than E. coli. It's a lot less expensive than antibiotic resistance, which is going to be a huge issue in the future, where we don't have enough antibiotics to kill the diseases and the bacteria, because we've used 80% of our antibiotics on animals. So it's It's less expensive if you look at the big picture.
You know, you're exactly right. You know, we talk about the hidden cost when it comes to animal products. And so the cost that we see that we buy in a grocery store or in a restaurant, that's not the true cost. Those are not real. The true cost is like what happens to an economy when a pandemic rages on. And by the way, if you look at the United Nations, they did the most in-depth analysis of future risks of pandemics. The top 2 risks, not like 2 of the top 20 or 30, the top 2 have to do with raising animals in food production. So if you look at risks of pandemics, what is the cost? If you look at, what is our healthcare cost for eating so terribly? A diet focused on animal products, what is the healthcare cost? And by the way, even what is our mental cost of feeling horrible about ourselves all the time, of being lethargic, of being sick, of seeing our family die way too early. All of those collectively are the hidden costs that come from raising animals in these factory farms. And so if you're looking at some products that at first cost a little bit more, but the costs are going to come down, also look at those hidden costs are going to come down with it as well.
I wanted to ask you, we had somebody from the Good Food Institute on, and we talked about the animal input, because there is animal input in that dish, in that an animal gave its cells for that dish. Can you talk, for those of us who are vegan, would your dish be vegan?
Well, it depends on what one's definition of vegan is. So I've been vegan since 2001, so about 20 years. I would eat cultivated meat. And the reason being is that you can actually get one cell from an animal, and that one cell can truly feed the world. It's amazing how this works. One cell, that's all it takes. Heck, you can get a cell from an animal who's living on a sanctuary and use this cell to produce all the meat in the world that you need. And so in my mind, if we want to reduce as many animals as we can being sent to slaughter, core components have to be plant-based meat and cultivated meat, because as much as it's a lot healthier to eat whole foods, plant-based diet, which I'm trying to do. I mostly do that now. I'm very proud of myself. However, it's a lot easier for people to eat these plant-based meats that are phenomenally delicious, that often taste even better than their meat counterparts. And again, one day with cultivated meat, it truly, literally is meat. Only the meat didn't have to cause any harm. So I think those are the components to make the big difference.
And who was chicken? His name was Ian, which is my husband's name. His name was Ian. Tell us about Ian.
So we named Ian after your husband because we thought he's such a good guy. And no, just teasing. So Ian really stands for I am not a nugget. And it is Ian. And Ian, came from, and this is all part of the problem with the chicken meat industry, is that Ian came from a small family farm in California that gave chickens outdoor access, pasture. If you're a chicken in the meat industry, this is where you'd want to be raised. At the same time, he still had the genetic manipulation already enshrined in him. And so he was already growing so big, so fast, that he died shortly after, even after, a feather was plucked from the ground from Ian to take some cells. He died a short time later at a sanctuary, just because these chickens, no matter where you house them, no matter what loving homes they can have, the genetic manipulation will cause them to basically burst from the inside after just a few months. It's sad, it's horrible, and this is what the chicken meat industry has done. And that's why I always tell folks who come to me like, all right, Josh, I'm gonna start trying to eat plant-based. What's the first thing I might wanna give up? And I'm like, you might wanna give up chicken meat first, because that causes likely the most suffering, certainly of any land animal, that we as humans cause.
Mm-hmm. Josh, I don't want to depart yet from the science of how this lab-grown meat is happening, because I think that the psychology around lab grown meat is what we may be up against, in these beginning stages. I was talking to my sister about it when I was visiting for Christmas, and the first thing she said was, "That just sounds like we're going to get cancer from that." I mean, and it basically described the way that you described it. So you did a fantastic job of saying, no, it's kind of like beer, right? Because you take yeast and you grow it in a lab, a brewery they call it, but we could call it whatever we want. So explain the science behind what is actually happening and how it is comparable to wine as well, really.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, you know what? The good news is that, the research was certainly done in laboratories. Same thing with the research to make Cheerios. Same thing with the research to make anyone's favorite cookie.
Sure.
Like you start somewhere.
Yeah.
And right now it's actually being produced not in a laboratory. It's being produced in a manufacturing facility, like a brewery. And so, if there's anyone, like, let's say a reporter's like, all right, we're going to, tell us about this lab grown meat. The company Eat Just is the first to tell them, actually, if you say lab grown meat, like that's not true. It's actually made in a manufacturer. And if you use the term lab grown, please use lab grown with Cheerios as well, because that's where it started. So that's one way I think of looking at it. Another way is it's kind of like a very ironic that your sister mentioned about, I just think of cancer.
Yeah.
Well, a leading cause of cancer is meat. And so it's like the standard American diet is a leading cause of this horrible illness that certainly I've sadly had family members pass away from. Perhaps you both have as well. And so we have to shift away from this if we do want to move away from having type of tragic impact of cancer in our society and heart disease. And so that's a critical point. And finally, I could kind of see or hear the wheels churning about like, is this kind of like a crazy thing going on here? This cultivated meat? Do you know what happens though? In Singapore, people were lined up to try to get some. We think about it being something like new is scary, but guess what? People want to try new things. Who lines up?
Progress. Us progressives.
Exactly. There you go. And we want to have progress. And he's like, gosh, I'm so excited to eat the same chicken I've eaten ever since I was, a couple years old in my life. Chicken it's boring. That's why everyone says tastes like chicken, because it's like a boring thing that people eat. People were excited in Singapore to eat this. The publicity behind this was as positive as I've ever seen any news event in the history of the world be positive. Truly. I really can't think of another thing that's happened that some could have said it was controversial to become so ingrained as a positive feature. In fact, numerous outlets have named their top 20 most impactful stories for the world in 2020. And this event in Singapore, producing this cultivated meat, made lists all across the world because people are understanding the impact that animal agriculture has on climate change, on our health, on animals. So I got to say, I'm feeling pretty good that people are going to eat it. I really do. And Singapore has been a good case study.
Yeah. We don't skirt the health issue though with our arteries.
Well, I would say this with cultivating meat, certainly there are things that you can do with cultivating meat you can't do biologically when it comes to changing animals. So you can have less fat in it, as an example. You potentially could have a less cholesterol in it, but it is never going to be a delicious kale salad with fruit on it. It's never going to be as healthy as a plant-based diet that's focused on health foods. It never will be. And it's never should be seen that way.
No.
That being said, as you two both know, the health argument doesn't always win the day. And there's a lot of folks out there, including my own family members and probably your family members too, that are eating things that we're just shaking our head like, come on, please, even just for your health, don't eat this. And yet they continue to do. So for the animal's sake, for climate change, like we have to help meet people where they're at. And cultivated meat is a way to do it.
You have actually on your Twitter page a picture of that receipt from that first meal, and so anyone who wants to see that, I think it's pretty historic. Also, when are we going to get it here in the United States, or we have listeners all over the world? So Australia, Germany, England, New Zealand, when are they going to see this?
I'm hoping that in 2021, it will be the year that countries across the world announce that they also approve the sale of cultivated meat. I think the underrated part of the Singapore announcement was, I think, the most important part, which is it set the global precedent. Hey, we are a trusted government that has scientists who look out for the public welfare of our citizens when it comes to food safety. And our analysis, which by the way, they did for 2 years, is that at least this product from Just, we have determined to be healthy to sell. And the fact that Singapore did it, I believe, will allow other countries to feel more comfortable about also moving forward. And sometimes it just takes a first. And the good thing too about when a country is first is that it starts to take a little type of competitive mentality with other countries. Like, wait a second.
Yeah.
If this is a new technology and this is the future meat, do we want to be last or do we be in the forefront of it? So, hey, let's get the competitive spirits going on. Perhaps no coincidence, Israel's prime minister, only a few days afterwards, did a visit to a cultivated meat facility in Israel to eat cultivated meat, and saying he wants Israel to be the lead on cultivated meat. Like, what other countries out there want to say, no, we want to be the lead. No, we want to be the lead. So I think it had to start somewhere. Singapore launched it. And instead of an arms race, how about we call it like the wing race? Chicken wings race for chickens that never had to be raised and killed, but producing cultivated meat instead.
The love race, the more race to more love. So you two met and got to know each other. You probably had met before, but got to know each other because Alexandra was skeptical about Prop 12.
A little story. I actually, we didn't meet, but I was sitting behind him on a plane and he was across the aisle and one over. And I was being bored and antsy and stuff. I was noticing that he was looking at whatever was on his computer. It was an animal rights person. I can't remember who it was, Dotsie, but I think we'd had them on our show, that guy. And then I saw him and I thought, I think that's Josh Balk, but I don't know exactly. And I didn't have internet capability. So I wish I had said, hey, who are you? It's a lesson to all of us, when you see a fellow animal right or person who's at least interested in animal rights, to just say hi.
Give a high five.
It was a lesson to me because I noticed you too, but I was too nervous to say hi. So I went home like, shoot, God, come on, build the courage to say hi. So at least next time, I powered through it. Next time I see you, Alexandra, I swear I'm going to be a big public high five, hug. Everyone's going to notice it. So next time that will happen. But
You're so brave in all the other areas of your life, Josh. Are you serious?
I was a bit bashful. I gotta say. So yes, we did talk about Prop 12, and Prop 12, Dotsie, was, as some folks may have heard of it, it's the strongest law ever passed for farm animals in the world. It was through a ballot measure in both of your wonderful state of California. And a ballot measure, for those folks who don't live in states that have a ballot measure, is that if you collect enough signatures on a government-sanctioned petition, you can put a question on the ballot. Some people vote for president or governor or senator. There's a question on there, and then people can vote to pass it or not.
And that's why we have so many props, is California, right?
You got it. You have a lot. Yes, a lot of props.
A lot of states have like 2 that come up every time. Okay.
California certainly has a lot of propositions, and ours was Proposition 12. So during that time, there was at least 12 of them. And what it would do when it passed is that it not only banned the confinement of egg-laying chickens, mother pigs, and baby veal calves in tiny cages, but it also banned the sale of eggs, pork, and veal from animals confined in cages. At the time, there was no place in the country or the world that had such strong standards. And it was a big battle against animal agribusiness. I did countless debates against agribusiness on the radio, TV, in front of newspaper editorial boards. They were certainly not happy with it. And at the end, the animals won. We got nearly 2/3 of the vote. So a political landslide. And I like to think that, in this day and age, and this was 2018, in this day and age when politics seems to put people just like hating each other and never coming together on anything, I think the animals can bring people together. And I can tell you both, for 100% certainty, Proposition 12 brought Democrats and Republicans and independents together to vote for this initiative. And since then, we passed similar laws in Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Colorado, and hope to have more to come.
Mm-hmm. So I want to peel back the layers on what it actually meant or means for animals, because it, did it give them more room? Did it get them out of the cages? Obviously, some people are aware that, PETA wasn't digging on it. Did it make it happen immediately, or was it, in 5 years? Because I just know traditionally agribusiness, it's like, it's very hard. It's a slow journey for them to make changes, and they fight and fight how much it's going to cost. And then the price of your food is going to go up because it's so hard to make these changes. So to peel back the layers on what it really meant for animals, really means for animals, I should say.
It means no cages.
Okay.
It means that for egg-laying hens, not only aren't they confined in cages, where most of them are in the country and in the world, it also mandated they must have nest boxes, perching areas, dust bathing areas, scratching areas. And so it provided them a life that is dramatically better compared to what they were currently living in, which is in a barren wire cage where each hen had less space than a sheet of paper to live on for her entire life. So it was a massive improvement. And for mother pigs, Dotsie, these mother pigs live in cages so small they can't even turn around. Yeah. And they're there for about 4 years. Imagine for 4 years never turning around. And this law bans that practice. And same thing for veal calves who are confined in a crate where they can't turn around for 4 months. These are egregious cruelties to animals that have been banned because of Prop 12. The phase-in date, I'm happy we're talking at the start of this year, because at the end of this year, all of Prop 12 comes into compliance. And so it's a fast phase-in compared to what other states have done and other nations have done in any laws that they've implemented on farm animals. At the end, does this create perfect conditions? Of course not. Like, this doesn't mandate utopia. But you know what? If you're a chicken and you had a choice between being confined in a small cage where you can't move your whole life for a year and a half, or living in a cage-free barn where you're at least able to perch, scratch, dust bathe, lay eggs, and nesting area, it is an easy choice. You prefer living cage-free. And that's why we're very proud of the accomplishment that we did.
Yeah.
Now, Prop 12 built on Prop 2, which came a few years before that, which was incredible. The most popular bill in California history is how I recall it. It either got the most votes or it won by the most. But it definitely made a difference. The reason I called you was because I didn't really see a difference between Prop 2 and Prop 12, except for that Prop 12 gave exact measurements, whereas Prop 2 said that, for example, a veal calf had to be able to turn around without touching the sides, and Prop 12 made that made specific numbers for that crate.
I thought there was no crates, no cages, Prop 12.
Yeah, you certainly cannot use a veal crate if you want to comply with Prop 12, or a gestation crate, or a cage for a chicken. And you're right, Alexandra, about Prop 2. Prop 2 was passed in 2008. That was a wonderful year. I really, that was maybe my favorite year. And we had that historic victory. It's the first ballot measure that included chickens in the United States. And it was a big battle against agribusiness, like Prop 12 was. And we won. And the difference with Prop 2 and Prop 12 is that Prop 12 was built on Prop 2, and it expanded the guidelines and created stronger standards. So Prop 2, it didn't mention cage-free, whereas Prop 12 ensures cage-free conditions. Prop 2 didn't include mandating enrichments. Prop 12 mandates enrichments. Prop 2, as you mentioned, did not have numerical standards when it came to space. Prop 12 does. And so it is a stronger piece of legislation that was built off of Prop 2.
Okay.
And that's what happens, I think, in issues that are related to, social justice and especially animal issues, is that, hey, at the time you pass what you can.
Mm.
But hey, we want to keep getting stronger and building a more humane society. And let's keep on going, make things better and better and better. And at if us three were hanging out in 2008, we would be saying, listen, this is great, historic. Let's keep on going though. This isn't a stop. This is a start. And Prop 12 was certainly, I would say the something that certainly could not have happened if it wasn't for the momentum that Prop 2 built in 2008, a decade earlier.
I have a question about something that I became aware of this year, which is just kind of the lack of awareness and implementation of laws. In California in 2019, we passed that every hospital and prison have at least one offering of a plant-based meal, which went into effect January 2020. And unfortunately, I had a friend who was in a terrible accident, was in the hospital for a month, who's a vegan. And initially he was in a coma, so he was on a feeding tube, and I was the one to crack the whip on making sure that was a vegan feeding tube. And then when he woke up to get a plant-based meal, that hospital had no idea what I was talking about. No idea. So who runs the oversight? Who makes sure now this law has passed, everyone gets excited, we're all behind it? Who makes sure animal agriculture, every single facility for chickens, pigs, veal calves that goes in, is it the USDA? Because I don't have a lot of trust in them. How do we make sure that this gets implemented by the end of this year?
The California Department of Food and Agriculture is in charge of following through with implementing Proposition 12. Mm-hmm. What it has already done is to ensure that other parts of agriculture are following laws in California. So it's not a new agency that is tasked with ensuring laws are followed. It is an agency that is the agency in California to do it. In fact, they've already put out their initial draft plans and how they're going to enforce Proposition 12, and they look good. They really do look good. And you know what? I'm with you. I'm skeptical, of course, of laws being followed. Heck, dogfighting still exists in the United States, even though it's illegal. Cockfighting still exists in the United States, even though it's illegal. So yes, we still have to work on law enforcement. I would say, though, that many things happen in this country are illegal, and we have to work on law enforcement to stamp it out. And whether it's human or non-human. And so with Proposition 12, I do believe I do certainly have cautious optimism that confinement of farm animals won't occur and that the law will be followed and enforced. If not, though, we will expose it and we will work with law enforcement to ensure that it is enforced and those who violate it are punished.
Okay. Is there anything we can do as consumers, or just stay tuned to see if you need us to rally around the implementation? I mean, is there any action anyone can take to say, make sure this is happening?
I don't think right now, but I think that when I'm on your podcast again, hopefully in a year, then we can talk about how it's coming to see, are they really enforcing this, implementing this? And if so, great. If not, let's rally the troops. No doubt about it.
Okay.
Your father is 80 years old, and he was recently on a podcast about turning vegan. You've been vegan for almost 20 years, right? So tell us what, for those of us who have family members who aren't vegan. Actually, I don't have any close family members who are not vegan, but
wow,
I know.
I have, we have so many friends. In fact, tell us the story, because I was really surprised that your dad had just become vegan.
Well, first of all, I clearly am not as convincing as you are. If all of your family members are vegan, and I've known my dad since my birth for 41 years, and it took 41 years for me to get him to do this. So if you can give me tips, that would be helpful. I can tell you from my dad, what happened was that when COVID hit, I was trying to be a good son, and I'm trying to keep him away from going to grocery stores. And so I was thinking, all right, how do I do this? And he is such a great father. He did so much for me and still continues to do so much for me as a father. What can I do to also give back? So I was like, Dad, how about I get groceries delivered to you? And he was just so touched that I cared about him as much as I do, I think. He's like, oh my God, it's so nice of you, Josh. Great. How does this grocery delivery work? He had no idea about that stuff. And so I told him, like, Dad, it just shows up at your door. It's amazing. I can do it on my phone. My dad doesn't have a cell phone. So keep that in mind, everybody who's listening. So he's like, all right. He's like, he must think this magical process is occurring. So what I did, which was, this is what I recommend for anybody. I went through the Whole Foods. I focused on Whole Foods because I want to be very healthy at 80 years old. I want him to have a very strong heart. And I said, okay, Dad, I'm going to go through the list of things that I see on my app here. And I'd explain what an app is, but on my app here. And you tell me if you like it. And so I went through all these items that are plant-based. And he told me things he doesn't like, things he does like. And at the end, he just got bags and bags of groceries of things he actually already said he liked. And as he said on the podcast that you cited, he actually finds this pretty easy and he's not going to go back. It's mostly because he's enjoying the food that he's eating. So that's the trick I did. But again, I wish we were friends earlier so you could have guided me a long time ago.
No, your way sounds like quick and easy. And, you know, your dad probably thought, oh, these delivery services, they only deliver vegan food. That's
I should have told him that. Sorry, Dad. You can only get these Whole Foods plant-based items. That's the only option.
You might not have converted your dad until later, but you converted so many people with your work at HSUS and your food with Eat Just. And we know you're going to be converting so many more when your chicken nuggets go worldwide.
Well, I certainly hope so. Hey, I'm grateful for you both. I mean, I can't imagine the type of wide-ranging impact that you two have made in so many areas of your work. You two have been, voices for the animals for so many years. To be able to talk to you in one conversation, what a thrill for me. And so thank you for everything that you've done for animals and continue to do on this podcast and outside the podcast. We're in this together, my friends.
We are.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.